Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever or whenever you happen to be listening to this. Thank you for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja based event and wedding photographer. Today, I'd like to look at what the best way is to handle your sales and your customer service. Now, this is a really important question because ultimately it's at the root of how you get new clients and how do you keep those that you already have. So let's remember that it's always a two-pronged formula. Some people only think in terms of how many customers am I going to bring into the door today? How many weddings am I going to shoot this year? How many weddings am I going to plan this year? Or how many weddings am I going to decorate this year? But the other side of the equation is how am I going to get more business from those clients that I already have? So I shot X number of weddings last year, and I want to do Y this year. But then, how am I going to get people from year X to get back in touch because they're planning Momsy's 50th birthday, or because there's going to be the bridal shower, or because there's going to be the naming ceremony, or whatever? And the corollary is still the same for those of you who are the planners, the cake people, the caterers, and on and on. So it's a two-pronged thing. How do we get new clients? And how do we keep those that we already have? Now, the best way to approach sales and customer service, in my own opinion, is we have to be customer-centric. And then we also have to establish our sales processes ahead of time. Now, when it comes to being customer-centric, I have to admit, this is something that I have a pet. It really has a home in my heart, the whole thing about being customer-centric, because for you long-term listeners, you know that I'm a wedding photographer. And in the wedding photography community, we have a lot of bad habits. Now, when I was getting into the game, maybe close to a decade ago, a lot of the business advice that photographers would receive, on blogs at the time, then podcasting was not really a thing. So on blogs and YouTube videos, photographers would talk about how a lot of the marketing was photography centric. There's a lot of focus on what it is that you're worth, how you value yourself, and blah, 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 and very little about the customer. Now, sometimes it doesn't matter how you market yourself when an industry is nascent, when it's young, because in the beginning, let's say in Nigeria, for instance, when the paparazzi game was really popping off, and all these forms of wedding books were still brand new and they were a novelty and things like that. I guess in the early part of the industry, it wouldn't really matter how it is that you market yourself because everything is a novelty, and so because of that, the novelty in itself will be part of the reason why people are flocking. So yes, even though it was more expensive than the traditional wedding photography that came before, people would flock to it because these things were novel. We had these new forms of photo books that were coming out, innovations in decoration and stuff like that. So I guess that drove the value after a while. But now it's not a novelty anymore, and the industry is saturated, in quote. I'm not one who believes in the saturation gospel because I think that rather than saying the market is saturated, you should focus on how it is that you should distinguish yourself. And that's the whole point of what branding is about anyway. So right now, our sales and our marketing really should be customer-centric. We should be focused on the customer and not focused on ourselves and all that high talk about what you're worth and all that talk about your worth and your passion and all that. I think really it's just a baloney, because none of you, I would really be interested to hear from any of you who would say that you picked any of your wedding vendors. And I'm saying for those of us who are in the wedding industry and who are already married, I doubt that you picked anybody because you thought he was passionate or he had a strong sense of self-worth or something like that. I mean, those are nice to have, but I don't think those are the primary considerations. So, if you want to, if you have a different opinion, then yeah, please reach out, tweet at me, or email me and let me know that what I'm saying is not totally true. That for your own wedding, you really were looking for someone who had a strong sense of self-worth and who was really passionate about what they do, and that was the overriding consideration above all else. Anyway, let me not get distracted and go into a tangent because I'm sure you guys can see that this is something that I can rant about all day. So, when I say you should become customer centric, part of it means that you have to get a lot of market feedback about how viable and how useful your product or service is. So, bottom line is, for someone like me who likes to shoot documentary style wedding photography, if I keep on insisting on this gospel of no Photoshop, but the Nigerian market is all about Photoshop and everything like that, and I'm not able to find a viable market, then well, let's just say that I'm at a dead end. So you need to get a lot of market feedback about how viable or how useful your product or service is, because this will help to reinforce how you market. This will reinforce how it is that you market. Sorry, one moment. I have a call coming in on the other line. Okay, what was I? So this is going to reinforce how you sell yourself over the long term. So we need to pay attention to the market. We're going to be able to see what the trends are and things of that nature, and that will help us build a valuable business. Then sales is a high stakes game. Especially for those of us who are in the wedding industry, it is really high stakes because these people pay hundreds of thousands of naira to get us to do what we do. I mean, even MCs at the very least charge 100 grand. So all of us are highly paid, and so this involves highly emotional decisions and highly emotional scenarios because people are not going to drop hundreds of grand across the board, and because of that, they're not going to get heated. So that's the reason why having a customer service playbook ahead of time is really important. Because when things go awry, when expectations are not met, that's not the time to be thinking on your feet. You need to have already established your processes ahead of time. For instance, what I alluded to yesterday about the hierarchy of communications, how when things go wrong, you need to do things face to face. If face to face is not practical, you pick up the phone. If that's not practical, you try and arrange a video conferencing, Zoom, WhatsApp video, whatever it is that is out there. Even iPhones have that some video app, some native video interface. I can't remember what it is that it's called. And then there's WhatsApp, and at the very bottom of the table, in my own opinion, is SMS and email, because those are really, really impersonal, and they're not going to help you when both of you are quarreling over what was delivered or how much it is that you think you are owed. So trying to freestyle in loads of cases is going to lead to costly mistakes. So don't freestyle. Make sure that you already have a sales system in place and a customer service system in place. But remember, they do not have to be cast in stone. That's the reason why you are being customer centric. By getting feedback from the market and from your customers, you're going to know where it is that you have to tweak your sales processes, and you have to tweak your sales, your marketing processes, and your customer service processes as well. So there are a lot of industries that use this to come up with a standard operating procedure, or SOP, as is commonly called. Now, there are some of you that don't want to go the whole hog of actually sitting down and coming up with a document, calling it SOP on sales or standard operating procedure on customer service or whatever. Bottom line is, whether you create a really official looking document that you're going to refer to or not, the most important thing is that you have to give all these issues some thought ahead of time and come up with some critical answers for yourself, so that when you are talking to your staff, because eventually you're going to get a few people under you. I'm a wedding photographer. Wedding photographers, eventually we start getting second shooters who believe in our style of shooting and want to apprentice under us and things like that. So eventually you build up a tribe. Other wedding planners who want to learn from you and who want to be like you and sound like you and act like you do. So you need to have thought of all these things ahead of time, so that when you bring these people into your fold, you're going to be able to tell them now, look, this is how we're going to run my business. When my clients call, this is how we address them. These are the issues that we take them through. This is how we wrap up the deal. This is how we're going to look and sound professional. This is how we're going to act. You need to decide on all these things ahead of time rather than bringing a bunch of people into your business and letting them come with their own opinions, their own prejudices, and their own worldview and start practicing all of those on your customers. So, that's the reason why all these things are important. So in summary, what's the best way to handle sales and customer service? Without going into any details, because we are going to explore more details in the future, just have these two things as your true north, as your guiding principles. Number one, you have to be customer centric, and number two, you have to establish your sales processes and your customer service processes ahead of time. Waiting until you start talking to the client now, or waiting until Yawa has gassed and you guys are now quarreling over deliverables like the wedding album and the bride being angry that you used silk instead of using Egyptian cotton. I mean, waiting until you have that argument to try and come up with a process, it's too late. Freestyling might burn you. So let's not freestyle and let's always be customer centric. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based event and wedding photographer, Tavishima Ayede. And I'll catch you guys on the next episode.